Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
We're already live, so we'll get started. So, based on your little subtitle that you put up on your screen, I think we may not necessarily be thinking the same way on this topic, so I'll explain.
No, I think we are. I'm just going for a pun.
Okay, cool. So I've been watching a lot of debates, as you had mentioned on our last episode, 35 minutes ago. I've been watching the debates again on the Call the Line YouTube channel, or The Line, which is where Matt Dillahunty is now, along with they have a bunch of different shows. And
so if you weren't listening to last week's episode, we, in the process of our conversations about tyranny, brought up different ways to approach people and changing people's minds and bringing people over. And one of the things we talked about was the atheist debater Matt Dillahunty and his technique and his style. And he does a YouTube call-in show. And now you're caught up.
Yeah, so I've been listening to that a lot. And then I saw... and I also, I watch a fair amount of politics, pundits and stuff on YouTube. And
did you watch Jordan Peterson, One Christian versus 20 Atheists, where he got so thoroughly trounced he refused to even say he was a Christian, so they changed the name of it halfway through the episode?
Yeah, yep. That is what inspired this episode. But he's not the only one. Between him and Tim Pool, and there's others that I'm not necessarily thinking of. I was thinking about and then on those atheist debates that they have on call-in shows are I think the product of people like ministers and stuff too, but the Jordan Petersons and the Tim Pools, which is Jordan Peterson and Tim Pool are people who have followings, and then we get to hear from the followers on these call-in shows. So.
They sort of parrot their points, and they can't really argue or defend them.
Yeah,
because they're just parroting them.
So I want to start off by that I think that they trick people into thinking they're intelligent by the articulation and big words. Mostly that's what I think about those two particular examples. There's others that I'm sure you and I can talk about. But what I wanted to say before we dive fully into the subject is, and I forget who said this or who made this jump, but it may have been Bill Burr. I don't remember. So the original bit was that John Mulaney said years ago, before Trump was president, that Trump was a poor person's idea of what a rich person was. And recently, someone used that example and said that Jordan Peterson is a dumb person's example of what a smart person is, and it works perfectly. And if you watch that debate, if you're not a Jordan Peterson sycophant and you watch that debate, and I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched clips, it is very clear that the guy will. I actually watched a really good parody of it, which is of that particular debate, which the guy was like, I'm not going to sit here and pontificate about the abstract, and he just you just throw out as many big words and as many SAT words as possible, and eventually I will have to reiterate in order to corroborate the and essentially you're not saying anything, you're just talking with big words. And I think that, so we have two things that I think happen, which is we can recognize intelligence in a lot of cases, but a lot of times we recognize it based on whether or not we think it presents as intelligent. So I'll give you an example. There's plenty of smart people who probably don't speak very clearly or very well, but there's also I think Barack Obama, I think, is a good example of somebody who is very intelligent and sounds very intelligent. He has learned to get rid of a few of the things that we do as average people. He doesn't say ums, but he still has those pauses. He just sounds like he's being deliberate. Instead of saying he'll say, I think that, and so we have
he's a very good public speaker. You're
Yeah.
taking some good courses and taking it to heart.
Right.
The techniques you use to avoid
Right.
those.
Yeah, so you're mixing. So with Barack Obama, I think is a great example of smart and sound smart. I'm struggling at the moment to think of somebody who is smart but doesn't sound smart. But I think that
I'll help you with one.
me.
Joe Biden.
Oh,
Joe
yeah.
Biden's a horrible speaker. Like he meanders. He's terrible at speaking. But we know he was smart by what he was able to accomplish throughout his career.
Yeah. And then you obviously have dumb and sounds dumb. We see those all the time. But you with Tim Pool, with Jordan Peterson, you have this. They have good vocabularies, and they have enough points of reference to and then they are articulate in the way, not only they're articulate in their actual words. So articulate is one of those words that can mean two different things. It can mean that you can articulate your point well, or it can mean that you speak the words literally clearly. Not that the sentences mean anything, but that the words are clear.
Articulation in the pronunciation realm.
They are articulate in their pronunciation, and sometimes, and it's understandable, even though language has a confusion with that, they are mistaken for being articulate in their points because they're articulate in their actual words. And so, are you familiar with Tim Pool?
And then there are those who use malapropisms that if you don't know what the words mean, they sound impressive, but they're not even using the words correctly. They're just throwing big words out there.
Yeah. I love a good malapropism. I love I'm forgetting which character it was that Damon Wayans used to do it all the time. I think it was the homeless guy, and he would, I am here to fornicate with your exaggerate, and like,
yeah. So it's one of the things that when Mikey and I used to do what we called Alley Cats, which is our 2-person improv. Though there was also, we did it with other people sometimes, but it was mostly about the two of us. 2 guys bowling in a bowling alley, 2 Brooklyn guys, and they were talking. And one of the things that we always did was CK, my character, had malapropisms all the time. Like he would use the wrong words all the time. But he was also very intelligent. He was just a bad speaker. He used the wrong words, but he wasn't stupid, the character.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I actually think you obviously have only met my dad the one time, but like, I think that
you know of.
My dad is actually, no, my dad's not a good example. I was going to say my dad now is, because he's struggling with words because of dementia. But my dad's a pretty smart guy. Especially when, like, I think if he had been better educated, he would be very impressively smart. But with, now he struggles with the words, and it's weird because he very clearly knows what he's like. It's not like someone who like loses train of thought completely. He just struggles to find the word now, and it's rough to watch because you're like, this is
towards the end. My grandmother, and I say the end, my grandmother was a lot older. It was like in her late 90s, not your dad's age, but she had a lot of trouble communicating, but it was only in pacing. Like Madhavi would sit with her for half an hour for what should have been a 5-minute conversation, but it took her that long to find the words, to put a sentence together. And it wasn't lack of intelligence. It was something in the communication was breaking, because she had all the thoughts there. I mean, she was always a really smart woman. And Madhavi was one of the few people, she loved Madhavi to death because Madhavi had the patience to sit with her without filling in the blank that she was trying to fill in. Madhavi would just let her do it and have the conversation just take forever.
Yeah. So I brought up the idea of the people who call into the line and stuff as the people who are affected by the Jordan Petersons and the Tim Pool. I don't know if you're even familiar with Tim Pool. By the way.
Not as much as I am Jordan Peterson, but I heard.
Watch Tim. Like, watch a clip. Go find a Tim Pool clip on Majority Report, and even if you don't watch with Majority Report's commentary, they find the clips where he just sounds like a buffoon who understands big words, like malapropisms. like he's.
Those of you are familiar with malapropisms, and I think 17th century
Yeah.
restoration drama by John Sheridan, The Rivals. There was a character named Mrs. Malaprop who used large words to sound intelligent but used them improperly, giving her character name Malaprop to the term malapropism, which is, of course, using a large word
Yeah.
incomprehensibly.
Yeah. So the reason I bring them up is because they have huge influences, and also I think this happens probably religiously as well. But you see, if you watch enough of those debate shows, you get people who call in who think that they're prepared to have these conversations because they watch what they think are these smart guys. They think that they've watched enough of it to understand that it's absorbed by osmosis. Like, I've watched enough Jordan Peterson that I can definitely argue with some dumb atheist about how, and they come out and they're not understanding what they're talking about half the time, and they're using circular logic, and I feel conflicted when I listen to them, because there's obviously a lot of cases where people are being dishonest, but there's a lot of cases where it's tough to watch because these people don't know that, they don't understand that it's circular logic. They don't understand because...
And they just jump to the next point. Sometimes they don't know how to defend when they're taken down. So they go, well, how about this? Because they...
Yeah. Sure, and that's frustrating.
It didn't go the way they thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
Matt or Forrest or whoever says that they don't expect to be said, and I don't know what the response, memorizing a bunch of chess moves but not knowing all of them, so you don't know what the response is when you get the wrong answer.
But if you watch Jordan Peterson or Tim, I keep wanting to say Tim Dillon, but it's not Tim Dillon, it's Tim Pool. If you watch them when they argue with people who are not college students, although sometimes with college students, I'm not trying to knock college students, but they argue with somebody who's a prepared debater on the same level as them, they do the exact same thing about they can't stay on a topic because they know that they're getting beaten or they're not making progress on that topic. And so it's like, it is increasingly frustrating to watch, and it is trickling down to their audience thinking that they can do the same thing. And it's tough because I get it. Like, we all have our blind spots as to our own abilities and our own intelligence in different ways. But when you think that you're calling up and you're going to prove to somebody, a professional debater, and you're like, there's some of them I've listened to where I actually have to stop at about 5 to 10 minutes in, because I'm like, they're not getting anywhere. Because I can listen to, the ones I really like are when it doesn't matter if it's angry or actually conversational, as long as there is forward progress. But it's really frustrating to watch somebody who doesn't have forward progress just keep repeating themselves, and this circular logic it's frustrating and it's overwhelming, and eventually it becomes boring. And so I am worried that what is this doing to discourse? We've gotten to this point in it's affecting, I obviously watch atheist ones, but it's hard to get into, it's hard to have conversations with people because you can't even lead, they used to say you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But you can't even lead the horse to water anymore.
Mm-hmm. So I was ignoring you because I was looking on Blue Sky because I saw a great bit on Blue Sky and I had to search and find it. It's from Terror Suspect. And it's McDonald's.
Terror or Terra?
Terror.
Oh, I thought you said Terra. I thought it was like a pun, like Terra, T-E-R-A.
No, Terror.
Okay.
Suspect. McDonald's cashier. Would you like fries with that? Jordan Peterson. How would you know what I like? Liking isn't the same as wanting, or dare I say, needing. Cashier. So you don't want fries, or JP? Define fries. MC, I don't know, they're potatoes so vodka is fries? I'll have vodka with my Big Mac. JP fans, this man is an intellectual powerhouse.
Yeah. Oh my God. The one that I was saying before where the guy did the same thing. Like, and I'm sure if you pull up the comments under that Blue Sky one, the JP
14,000 likes.
the JP fans though will come up and be like, "You just don't understand him. It's not that he's not saying something; it's that you don't understand it." And it's like, oh my god.
Well, right away, when has Peterson ever said something this absurd? Is right one of the first responses.
Yeah.
Like all the time.
Yeah. The fact that the in the debate with the guy who says, he's actually pretty polite the way he says it at first when he's like, "You're a Christian, right?" And he's like, "Why would you assume that?" And like, I don't have to tell you. And he goes, "What's the name of the video that we're doing right now?" And he's like, you're a real smart ass. You're really something.
Question. It's where we started. It's the
and Jordan Peterson's
Jordan Peterson. My first really getting to know him, I guess, was when he first really break through. Was when he was fighting against the Canadian law about government employees, of which he was one because he worked in a public university.
Yeah,
had to respect pronoun usage. It was a law about landlords and public officials couldn't purposely misgender people.
Yeah.
And he went on this rant about how evil it was and what it was doing to him, and he's going to get arrested if he makes a mistake, and all this bullshit he knew wasn't true. And then he filmed and was publishing him talking to the equivalent of congressmen, like people passing the law, whatever their title is in Canada, and he's going off on it about this law and how horrible it is, and how he's not going to stand by it, and he's not going to change his life and force him to do it. And then one of them is like, "But you live in Ontario; it's already the law there. We're just extending it to the rest of the country. Literally, you've been under it for 5 years. Nothing that you're talking about has happened to you." And it's just all his sounding intelligent was right out the window when they pointed out the basic thing that it already was the law where he was. He was complaining about a state law being made federal, from American terms, when he lived in the state where the state law existed already.
Province, parliament, and I've exhausted my extent of Canadian governmental vocabulary.
Terms are for their country.
My Canadian governmental vocabulary is expansive and also ejaculatory and
sorry.
I mean, what he sounds like, honestly, and actually what him and Tim Pool sound like are when I had to write a book report or a paper that I had not done the work on, and I was like, if I use big words, I can I have a 3,000 word count that I have to hit. Okay, I think that the red badge of courage was a badge given out for courage that happened to be red. The red symbolizes blood and
the red badge
is courageous.
Was well articulated using prose that told the story in a way where the plot led to the climax and the characters did things that were moving the plot in an articulated kind of intelligent way.
Yeah. The Lord of the Flies was a lord.
I have the concept,
and there were flies. Yeah. It's funny too because when I was thinking about bringing this topic up with you guys, I had
listen. I appreciate that you're inclusive, but I go by singular pronouns personally. You don't have to say you guys when you're talking to me.
Alex. This was a topic we were going to do when you were gone. So.
Do you see? I don't see an Alex here.
Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, when I was thinking about it,
Alex was here and talking about this at the same time.
When I was thinking about that, I was thinking also about including Dave Rubin, and then I was realizing that Dave Rubin doesn't even sound fake intelligent. He just I'm actually amazed that he has any following whatsoever. Because how can you be tricked by that guy? Tim Pool, I kind of get how you can be tricked by him.
I'm gonna call up some wisdom from one of your favorite people in the world, non-sarcastically, the late great George Carlin.
I knew it.
Yeah. Which is think about how dumb the average person you meet is. Statistically, half the people are dumber than that.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too. I thought you were going to bring up the one where he says there are people who are dumb, or there's people who are full of shit, and what was the third thing? It was full of shit, lying, full of shit, dumb. You're like, oh, and fucking nuts. And he says, you can listen to them for a second. You go, they're full of shit.
You're full of shit.
And then he goes, sometimes they're, not full of shit. Sometimes they're fucking nuts. And then wow, this guy's really dumb. And then he goes, Dan Quayle is all three. But yeah, Dave Rubin, to me, it's amazing that he has a career, because he's not funny, he's not smart, and he's full of shit. But
I was trying to explain to Joseph, my son Joseph, the difference between Trump's bullshit and Elon's lies.
yeah,
And when Trump just spews bullshit without knowing what he's saying, and if something sticks, he'll say it again 100 times. Musk very calculatedly tells lies with a very effective manner. He's good, and he's a good example of the sounding intelligent. Engineers and programmers know that he knows nothing about the tech he talks about, but he knows enough tech words that lay people think he knows what he's talking about because he's good at sounding like he knows what he's talking about, unless you know the topic, and then you realize he's full of shit.
I also think he benefits slightly from the Arrested Development Charlize Theron. Did you ever see when she was on Arrested Development?
I did, but I don't recall it. I mean, I saw the whole series, but I don't.
Yeah. So she played a British person who was mentally handicapped, and it took Jason Bateman's character like several dates to realize, because she was British, that she was mentally handicapped, because they just sound so much smarter. Their accent sounds smarter, and so I think that Elon has the benefit of an accent that doesn't sound unintelligent to us on its face. I mean, to me, I have a friend who's from South Africa who listens to the podcast occasionally, and I told him one time that I always thought of the South African accent as just sounding like racist Australian, but
it's redundant.
Anyway, but which is funny because my friend doesn't sound like that at all. But that's to me that's what Elon sounds like, is just like he sounds like this odd like a Nazi mixed with Australian, but he is a Nazi part at least. Yeah. Sarah and I were we went to the beach yesterday, and we were on our way back. Logan's asleep, and we were listening to last week's Skeptocrat because I was a little behind, and Eli was doing an Elon impression, and Sarah pauses and she goes, his Elon impression isn't very good. And I'm like, no, it's not good. Elon's such a hard impression to do. I'm like, but it's funny.
Yeah, hardly any of his impressions are good. I think it's half the gag.
I told her about Melania. I was like, his Melania impression is terrible, but it's my favorite of his impressions because it's just like blondage.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, Elon is absolutely Elon. At least I'm not going to defend Elon really.
No, he's a liar. I was just saying he's a liar when Trump is a bullshitter. Like there's like Carlin said, there's a difference between full of shit, and
Elon, I think though, when it comes to the like sounding intelligent, I also think that Elon has a couple of benefits in the fact that like not only the linguistic side of things, but he has like not credibility.
Actually, he isn't necessarily unintelligent, but he is not an expert in the things he pretends to be experts, and he's good at sounding like an expert when he's not. Right.
But he also has the benefit of having, he's the first person who created, I say created because he didn't create any of his fucking businesses, created multiple trillion-dollar companies or something, or billion-dollar companies. I forget how they worded it, but he's the only person, and this was because he was one of the PayPal people, then Tesla, now SpaceX. But so like that gives a certain level of credence to him that he doesn't deserve, because he didn't create any of those things.
He bought
he
into the right companies and then
he
used his
had
bullshit skills to help propel
I,
them.
and I
Bullshit.
think I'm not trying to even like knock that, because I think that having the vision to know when something is
That's what he's good
good
at. He's good at.
is,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's a legit talent.
but he brought into failures also. He's just that
Oh yeah,
his wins were such big. PayPal was such
yeah,
a big win that he could afford to fail. Like some is Trump with real estate. His
yeah,
wins in real estate are big enough that he can fail in everything else he does, but
yep,
he's not overall a failure because the win was so big it outpaces the failures.
yeah. And PayPal was a legitimate success. Tesla and SpaceX, if you didn't include government subsidies, I don't know
Right, his
that
skill
they're
is lying and cheating to get government subsidies and financial backing from other people. Like he
yeah,
told the government he had financial backers. He told the financial backers he had government funding, so they both gave him money, and it became true after the fact. After he lied to each one of them.
yeah. How is that not considered a Ponzi scheme? Like that
No,
should
it
be a
is,
crime.
except he succeeded, so he has the money. He said,
Oh, okay.
"Yeah, he just succeeded. If anyone wanted to prosecute him for it, they probably could have, but they didn't." The government's so tied up with him. I just hope that he gets deported because he clearly lied to get his citizenship because he was on a student visa, quit school, which you can't do, started a business, which you can't do, and then to become a citizen, they had to have said, "Did you violate your student visa rules?" And he had to have lied and said no, or he wouldn't have gotten his citizenship. So Trump was talking about going after people who lied during the process, any little mistake to kick him out of the country. So if he's mad enough at Elon, and Elon's really going to cancel the government contracts that they like SpaceX.
Yeah.
He could kick Elon out. I want to see them fucking. It's King Kong versus Godzilla. I
Oh
want
yeah.
to see them hurt each other, and I want to see Elon deported. That will be the ultimate win because I
I
don't.
saw
He's not going to take Trump down, but I want to see Trump take him down.
he could really hurt Trump though.
Maybe it's hard because Trump's fans are fucking morons, so it's hard
True.
to hurt him.
But so are Elon's.
I know, but Elon doesn't rely on his fans as much. That's a hero.
True. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
He can get deported and he can still be rich outside of America, but it
Yeah.
would be a great insult that he got deported.
Yeah. Elon. So I saw a thing on Instagram the other day. It said Alien versus Predator with Elon and
I love that.
And one thing that nobody has, I haven't seen anybody call this out, but do you remember the tagline for Alien versus Predator, the first one?
No.
No matter who wins, we lose. That was the actual tagline from Alien versus Predator.
Right, because that's the other one there, because they were on Earth. Right? Yeah.
So, and I think it holds up.
Well, you edged up against something I wanted to bring up, which is the opposite of being stupid and sounding smart, which is being smart and sounding stupid. And I have a couple examples in my head, and one I may have talked about on the pod before, but I know our listeners don't hear every episode. I used to work in animal science, and there was one time I was with our veterinarian from New Jersey, the director of the department, and our clinical veterinarian who was from Climax, North Carolina, which is near High Point, which is not far from Winston-Salem if you need a cigarette afterwards. And Randall, Dr. Reynolds, are the clinical veterinarian who's also got a PhD in cancer biology. He's a very, very smart guy. He is talking about a brown spot around the wall, and we're getting from context clues that it's some kind of insect, but we're not sure what kind of insect a brown spotter is. And so Steve, the director, goes, "So does it leave like brown spots on the wall, or does it have brown spots?"
Yeah.
And Randall goes, "What do you mean spots?" We're like, "Well, you said it's a brown spotter." He goes, "No, spotter." We're like, "Yeah, but so does it have spots?" Or he goes, "Spotter, like in a spotter web, a spotter."
Yeah. It wasn't until the second time you said it that I was like, what is he talking about?
But it's a realization that he had the thickest Southern accent, which as Yankees, you and I know you don't like saying Yankee because because the baseball connotation, but
I don't care.
But as Northeasterners, we are taught through all the media we consume that Southern accent equals stupid, and he is brilliant.
Oh yeah,
with a super thick Southern accent. And I have friends from Brooklyn with super thick. I was an engineer in an engineering school before I transferred to NC State, which I guess still is an engineering school. But I was in Brooklyn Polytechnic, which is now the engineering division of NYU. It got absorbed, and I had fraternity brothers who had the thickest Italian Brooklyn
Oh
accent,
yeah.
who were brilliant engineers. So you learn. And I knew this one guy from West Virginia. I used to see at music festivals. Who he was a ranger, and he had no formal education really, but he was so brilliant. Talking to him was amazing. But he had such a thick accent that my father and I would have to get together afterwards and piece together what he was saying, or
Yeah.
which words did you catch, and figure out what he was saying. But it was that lesson, especially the brown spotter, of the accent does not dictate the intelligence behind the person. Like that's not
No.
a deciding factor. You can sound like what you've been told is not intelligent and be brilliant. And it happens with people who English is not their first language all the time. People
Oh, for
underestimate
sure.
it. But there's people who English should be their first language. And
I think if you keep it to the English speaking accents, like the English first language accents, almost every American accent sounds unintelligent to me, except for like the lack of, like that Nebraska, like I don't have an accent, I'm just talking. Like other than that,
the Mid-Atlantic radio
like
voice.
like thick Southern sounds dumb, New York sounds dumb, Philadelphia sounds fucking ridiculous, Massachusetts sounds insane, all of them. But then you go outside the U.S. and not a single English-speaking accent sounds stupid to me outside the U.S., which is crazy. Like
I don't know.
I think
Australian one.
it doesn't sound. It sounds wild. It sounds like you're gonna like
Yeah, but I was thinking I was talking the other day. We were watching. It's on YouTube. We'll watch movie trivia things. We'll show 4 seconds of a movie or information on a movie, and like with a host of family, we'll play trivia. And they had something about Rocky, and I had to explain to the kids that Sylvester Stallone wrote, directed, and starred in Oscar-winning Rocky.
Yeah,
as his first major, thing. I mean, he had other stuff, but his first major thing, obviously. And we're saying like he sounds like the dumbest person on the planet, but he wrote, directed, and starred in Rocky.
He also sounds like that not only because of an accent, but because he had a stroke when he was born.
Right, but so I'm saying the voices did not how someone talks and how they express themselves is not always match their intelligence.
I was taught, so I went in to do a little bit of don't do it. So Logan's class had a pizza party for their last week of school today, and Sarah and I brought in the pizza, and we helped out with a couple of other parents, and we were talking to some of the other parents, and one of the parents, it was actually the teacher, her mother came in because the teacher's like 23, 4 or 5 years old, but she I'll have to completely cut that. I just used her name.
See, that's why you're a patron. Patrons heard that conversation. You non-patrons, unless you're listening live, did not hear that conversation.
Yeah. So anyway, so we were talking, and we're talking about different things, and the idea of speaking different languages came up because one of the parents was Brazilian, and her son was speaking Portuguese, and Logan and his friends were on Google Translate being like, follow, and they were talking about, they were trying to like say stuff to him and see what he said back. And it was a fun class, and it came up that one of the girls in the class is from Japan, and I said, oh yeah, Sarah and I chaperoned a field trip back a few months ago to the Museum of Science in Raleigh. The Natural Science
Museum of Natural Sciences.
And I said, and she was in our group, and when she was in our group, someone mentioned Duolingo, and I said, oh, do you guys do Duolingo? And she said, I do. And I said, oh, what language are you learning? And she said, English. And I said, English isn't your first language? And she goes, no, I've only been here for a year. I'm from Japan. And I was like, you don't have an accent.
You speak better than I do.
And I was like, and she goes, well, I'm not very good at English yet. And I said, your English is better than any other language will ever be. Like, no matter how hard I work, I will never, ever.
Well, to our French colleagues, since you worked in the company for a while, like Remy would be, upset about his English. And like, no, like he came to America to work on his English. I'm like, your English, I understand everything you're saying. To us, that's the bar. To them, having no accent would be the bar.
If I moved to a country where they spoke another language and lived there until I was 100 years old, I would not sound as clear in that language as Remy did in English. And like literally, I did not know this girl wasn't American born. But, she's only been here for like a year and a half. And I was like, that's crazy. I mean, at that age, accents don't hold the same way, but
when Jacob was in, I think it was kindergarten, there was a Japanese girl in his class that he, like he told us, they told us when we were chaperoning a field trip to downtown Apex over lunch, the two of them told us and her mother very seriously that they were going to get married when they grew up. And so I said, Jacob, why do you want to marry her? And he's like, because I love her, because she's perfect. And I said, why is she perfect? And he says, because her star never falls. And what that was their names are written in stars on top of the blackboard at school. And when you're bad, it moves down. If you get down past a certain level, you get like punishment assignments, whatever. So you have to. And both Jacob and this girl were the only ones who their stars never fell.
Yeah.
Jacob's because he goes, he said I was sick one of the first days, so I don't know how you get it to go back up again. So I'm afraid to let it go down. So he never missed an assignment. He missed a perfection. But the two of them are the two kids whose stars have never moved down at all. So that's why they loved each other, because they were both perfect in school.
Nice. It sounds so poetic, though.
I know. I thought
her stars.
Like a star never falls, and then we realized, like, we were in school and saw their two names at the top of the list. And we went, oh wait, that's what he means. She doesn't.
She is the evening. She is the evening star to me, and
yes,
Juliet is the west.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
She is the east, and Juliet is the sun.
Yeah.
Nice fair sun.
So anyway, back to sounding intelligent versus being intelligent. I get frustrated.
Well, it's an important skill to sound intelligent, even if you're not, if you want to get jobs. Because in big corporations where the interviews are the star interview with the situation, the tactic, the actions, and the results, telling a good story is more important than being able to do the job you're interviewing for. Because what they care about is, in a corporate world, that story and how they grade you for those categories. So being a storyteller is more important than being technically proficient about getting a job.
Yeah, yeah. I also think that, like, especially when you look at, like, grammar and
grandpa.
And grammar and grandpa. When you look at grammar and dialect, you talked a minute ago about English second language speakers, but also when you talk about English speakers, native English speakers who have different dialects for whatever reason, they oftentimes aren't taken seriously in black people. If black people, they have to code switch, they have to, like, literally put into what the acceptable business grammar and dialect is in order to succeed. And they can be so much smarter than the people they're working with, but they have to switch who they are and how they speak, because we accept that, like, this way of talking sounds smarter than...
I think that happens to anyone whose main mode of speaking isn't that mid-Atlantic radio voice. Like, if you went to a corporate job and, like, I got an idea that's wicked pissa for our campaign, you would not be taken seriously, versus I have an idea that I think would be really effective.
I agree to an extent.
It's more so for marginalized communities, 100%. But it's true across everyone that you have to, as my dad say, play the game by the game's rules. Like, they won't accept.
That is true.
Like, this fucking shit is amazing. You'll fucking love this thing. That would not fly at work, and that's the Brooklyn speak, but it's not going to fly at work.
Or even if you went, like, and we're like, I was thinking on the marketing reports that maybe we would want to do that.
Yeah, so in our corporate improv comedy workshops, Mikey and I used to often talk about the often misquoted statistic. There's a thing about, like, 86% of what you say is your body language, and then some 10%, 12%, something like that, or some percentage. Like 10% is your tone and how you say it, and only the last couple of percentage points are the actual words you use. And people often use that and misquote it and say it's what you communicate is based on that. But that's stupid, because that means if I were to go, you would understand what I'm saying, because my body language and my intonation are good. And obviously you don't, so that's bullshit. But what is true from that study that people get wrong is how much credence people give you is based on those things. So we would do the example of, if I'd say, hey, Mikey, can you tell me how to get to the McDonald's from here? And he would do typical low status things of looking down, pointing his toes inward, slouching, covering his face, be like, if you go down about a mile and you turn, you turn right, and you go about a half a mile, McDonald's is there. And then I'd go, okay, do high status, and he'd stand up straight and point his toes outward and take his hand away from his face. I'm like, how do you get to McDonald's? He goes, oh, you just want to go down the road about a mile and turn right. Okay, you want to turn right. You're going to turn right there, go down about another half mile, McDonald's. Like the exact same words with the same repetition.
Oh, yeah.
Just said better and more. Which guy would you listen to, even though they said the same thing? And it goes a lot of the same way for sounding intelligent. How you say it goes a long way in how much credence people give to what you say.
Yeah, confidence absolutely sells it, and even when you're speaking in a mannerism or tone that sounds confident, if your words aren't confident, that can affect it. Like they talk about it a fair amount on those debate shows that I listen to, which is they'll say the religious person will ask something along the lines of, well, if it didn't come from God, where did it come from? About one of these questions that science hasn't answered. I can't think of an example. And oftentimes,
if God didn't create consciousness, how did cells get conscious?
And one of the things that specifically one of the hosts says, I think they probably all say it, but she says it the most often. Her name is Eve Was Framed or Promised. I think you may know who I'm talking about.
Oh, I know. I know on TikTok.
Yeah.
I don't know her real name.
She says it all the time. She goes, I don't know. And that is okay. That is honest. And like, I don't know, because who could possibly know everything?
I don't know the answer, but that doesn't mean the answer is a magic eternal God.
It doesn't, but it also, like, saying I don't know doesn't take away from my argument. If I don't know, it's honest. And like, whereas, I've heard this said about conservatives versus liberals too, about like, conservatives never apologize for America. Conservatives never admit, and those are seen as like these bad things. It's like, no, admitting when you don't know something is a good thing. And admitting when you've done something wrong is a good thing. But if you're confident, and it does trick people, it tricks people. If you're like, if you and I were both asked, how many miles from the sun are we? And you said, confidently, 12,175,000 miles. And I said, I don't know. They're going to believe you. Even though, like, I'm assuming that number's way off. I don't know the actual
93 million miles.
Okay. Yeah.
On average, obviously it changes in the course of the orbit, but on average.
Right. But there's no shame in, like, because why... For any like logistical purpose, why do I need to know?
No one told you. Like, it's not your fault that nobody told you the answer.
Right. And we can't know everything, and sometimes the thing that you don't know isn't consequential. There's no reason I personally know. Some people do need to know for other reasons how far the sun is from the Earth.
If you're in Congress deciding the funding of NASA, you shouldn't be in that conversation if you don't know the basic science of what you're talking. You shouldn't be in charge of the CDC if you're anti-vax because you don't understand how science works.
Right.
It's okay if you don't know how science works and you're a librarian. You don't know how science works and you are the greatest poet that's ever lived. You're Shakespeare. You don't have to. But if you're going to be in charge of science, you should know.
Right. And we get into that like very often when it comes to people who are confident in bullshit. I mean, obviously the word con men comes from confidence. Like, like they will just, there's no hesitation. But like, again, if you get asked, or maybe it's something with a consequence to it. Like, if someone came up to both of us and said, hey, what does the college bursar do? And you say, oh, that's the person who washes the dishes. And I say, I don't know. But you said it confidently, like, and that it's like, oh, I was told to go see the college bursar. Like there is a consequence to that. People will listen to you. Now that's an easily remedied.
Why I gave the check to the guy doing the dishes, but that's what he told me to do.
Yeah, like it doesn't matter. Like this is a common problem we're having is that your average person would look at the confidence and partly there's a gullibility to that. There's a sense of like, why would you lie? But we're at a point like, so, that example is a bad example in the sense that like this random person doesn't know either of us. But like, let's say you've lied to them 100 times and they know you've lied to them, and you confidently answer, and I say, I don't know, man, and I've never lied to them, but I've often not had the answer they're looking for. They're still going to take you more seriously statistically than they are going to take me, even though you've lied to them a bunch.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's been, yeah, it's all, it's it. But the thing is, if I'm like, I don't know, the Mercer's the guy, I think he works in the laundry, and you're like, I don't know, but we can find out. I'm going to trust you to find out because you sounded more confident than not knowing. Like, like the answer of in any situation of I don't know, but I think we can look into that.
Yeah.
It's a better answer than a weak guess. One of the tours we were on in Alaska, my family and I went to Alaska recently.
You haven't mentioned it.
Not on this podcast. That was last week.
I think you said it with the scruff beard.
That was last week, man.
Oh, okay.
You can't keep your weeks apart. I was wearing a green shirt for that podcast.
You did change your shirt.
So, but one of the tours we were on, the docent was very young. And we talked about afterwards, like he could have been as young as 16 or 25. Like we couldn't tell, but young, and not and was hesitant with a lot of answers to the point where we didn't know if he had some sort of stutter or if it's just early in the season and he's new at this tour.
Yeah.
And he'd memorized everything because he had all the answers, but he was very slow about getting them out and had trouble finding his words. But like we didn't even want to kind of cut in with the word he's looking for because we didn't know if it was a speech impediment type thing. Which that would be rude, or if it was just I'm nervous, so the words aren't coming to me right now because I'm not. Yeah. It's the beginning of the season and I haven't done it 100 times yet. But at one point, we asked him a question about how long they smoked salmon for in these smokehouses he showed us, and he said it was great because he thought for a second. He goes, "I'm not really sure about the answer. I think it's something like in the line of like weeks as opposed to hours, but I don't know for sure. I'd have to check that." And we're like, "That's a great way to answer." Like. Yeah. He gave us what his thought the opinion is, but he gave it very cruelly that he was not confident in that answer. But he was confident in the way he told us that I don't know. I think it's something like this. So just to give you a level set, it's not 6 hours. It's more like 2 weeks. And we can find out when we go back. Similarly, we were hiking, and the woman who was leading our hike, every plant we asked her about, she was like, bam, 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 with answers. And at one point, Leah was like, what's this purple flower? And she looked at it, she goes, I'm not sure I've seen that one before. Take a picture of it, and when we get back to the van, I've got a guidebook, and maybe we can go through the pictures real fast and find it. But like, just as fast as confident with that answer as the correct answers everywhere else. Yeah, and technically that was a correct answer. I mean, she didn't lie, but like it made us feel very confident about that. She wasn't bullshitting about the other ones, like both of them. Oh, yeah. The fact that you're willing to say when you don't know means I should trust you when you do give me an answer, because if you didn't know, you would be honest about that too.
Yeah. I used to joke with Sarah and her mother because they talk about some things that were maybe girlier or maybe
the pegging conversation, we know.
Higher class or whatever. They would talk about these different things that I had not heard. But they talked about them back and forth so confidently, and I would say to them both, I'd be like, you could just be making shit up and I wouldn't even know. Because, like they would be like, oh, the credenza looks great over there, and the duvet, I now know what a duvet is. I still don't know what a credenza is.
You're stupid. Remember the Cat in the Hat? He lost his credenza, his 3-handled credenza in the Cat in the Hat in the cartoon.
I don't remember that. But like they would talk.
That was the gag that nobody knows what a credenza. They're looking for it. Nobody. Yeah. Credenza is like like a cabinet, like a line that looks in the wardrobe, like a wardrobe.
Oh yeah.
So it was ridiculous that he was looking for his 3-handled credenza, but it's one of those words that you don't admit to not knowing. So that was the Dr. Seuss gag in there.
Yep, they would say it so confidently. They would talk about stuff so confidently, and they would be talking in front of me or beside me or whatever, like around me, and I'd just be like, "You could be 100% like you could fuck with me right now, and I would not know it." And I would tell them that, and I'm pretty confident they never did, but like that is like inconsequential, but and I'm like Sarah makes fun of me because she calls me Dr. Google, and she says if you ever say something in front of Mike that he doesn't immediately believe, she says I do this move.
You should, because I lied when I said it's like a wardrobe.
It's not.
It's a piece of furniture, but it's not like a wardrobe. It's more like a stereo stand, TV stand, kind of low and flat, like a wardrobe on its side, maybe.
Okay.
No, but it's not. It's a piece of furniture. So
I'm looking out because I just don't believe
sounds
you now.
realistic. No, it's like a TV entertainment center. Well, I mean, in a modern.
Okay, yeah.
The old usage, it would have been probably for clothes and stuff, but just been low and flat.
Yeah. So Sarah
like
says,
a dresser kind of thing back in the old days.
Sarah calls me Dr. Google, and one of my coworkers at my last job, which I will eventually out myself as, was once Alex is no longer there.
Oh, the one with the geography. Not geography, but the
geometry
related.
Geometry Alphabetical Company,
yeah.
the Square Q.
Was it Richard Lewis used to say, "I rented a car the other day. I can't tell you what brand it was, but it rhymes with Maguire."
Oh no! But I did see it was Mitch Hedberg used to say, "I stayed at a hotel, and I can't tell you. I'm not going to tell you what, because I think in the bit he was pretending like he was still staying at the hotel, and he's like, I won't tell you which hotel, but I will tell you that they do have 2 trees."
Yeah, well, we had a lot of trouble with checking in our luggage at our airline, and I don't want to say the name of the airline. I mean, I'll tell it to you in Greek. In Greek, it would be Delta.
Yeah. Imagine there was like an airline called Delta Airlines. John Mulaney has a bit like that. But
and the other one was, I had a friend who did improv in Minneapolis, I think she was, but she worked for American Express, and they were not allowed to talk about work online. Like, it was a rule; they couldn't talk about being working for the company. So she used to say, "I work for American Express," was what she always said.
Nice. So Sarah calls me Dr. Google, and people when they see me do it get frustrated, and I am probably not great about the way I handle myself with that, which is I do one of 2 things. If you tell me something and I'm skeptical of it, I do one of 2 things. I will look it up, and if you were wrong, I will tell you, and if you were right, I will tell you that I didn't believe you and that you were right. And so that comes across as
Ren says not a wardrobe, and you're like, I don't believe.
Yeah, but you were but with you, it's not as rude.
Well, one of them's a lie. I told you 2 different things. One of them's a lie.
Right. But I think it comes across as rude to people, and I'm like, and either way, I guess it comes across as rude.
To Joseph when he gets mad sometimes when we correct him on something, and I'm like, Joseph, your goal should be to become right, not to prove you are right, but to end up right at the end of the conversation. So if you find out you were wrong, that's a win. That's not a critique. It's a win to find out that
I'm making you better.
Yeah, one of the key points of skepticism is to endeavor to become less wrong.
Yeah. I'm gonna next time I get called out on it, I'm gonna just be like, I'm making you better. That will not go over well.
Something is a good thing, and then being corrected is a good thing. Find out the correct answer.
I understand that it doesn't feel great to be corrected sometimes, but I also understand that it can be frustrating when you find out you were wrong. But I don't know, it's sometimes people are so confident, and I just don't believe anything anymore. I mean, there's certain people that I believe, and there's certain times where it's like, well, that's a cultural thing that is perspective. But if you told me that the 1959 winner of Best Picture was Dune, I'd be like, the fuck it was. I don't think Dune was written yet. But anyway, let's wrap up because I really have to pee because I've been drinking a lot of liquids today because I'm trying to stay hydrated. So why don't you start us off?
Okay. I was pretending I was locked up. I wasn't. Hey, if you're watching us and you saw me do that great freeze take, a little bit of advice. If you want to stay totally still, it's really hard to hold one position and take totally still. What's not really hard is to not move. So rather than think about freezing in place, just think about not moving. Somehow that mind shift makes it easier to do. Just a little bit of advice from a former improv director to you. But since you're watching us on video, go ahead and like the video. Maybe make a comment about that little tidbit I just told you, because I told you it as if I was confident and intelligent about it. So maybe you believe me. Maybe you don't. You can experiment and find out for yourself if I'm right. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you'll know when we release more videos. Ring the notification bell so you'll know exactly when we release more videos. If you do those things, you will become a more intelligent, well-rounded person. I personally guarantee it. And you know what? You can even go to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff and follow us there without paying any money. Just follow us there and you can watch our video streams live. And I am done talking because I only talk about things that go in your eye hole. When the things that go into your ear hole or asshole, I turn it over to Mike.
Anyway, we're going to deal with your ear hole because we don't have any products that go in your asshole. But I will say, if you don't believe Matthew, go to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff and verify that he was telling the truth about a free version on there. Because he was. But verify. If anything, that's a big takeaway you should get from this episode is don't judge people by vocabulary or confidence. Double check things.
Credenza is not a word.
Including
us.
us.
The close in it, but it's small, lower to the ground.
Yeah.
Silly.
And then if you are listening to our podcast on any podcast app, Earholes, you could give us a like, a 5-star, a thumbs up, whatever your podcast app of choice allows. If it allows comments or reviews, do that. And like we had already mentioned, patreon.com/talking with the big stuff is a great place to go get the free version for $0, and it'll also get you notifications as to when we're going live, and you'll be able to see our live streams when we go live.
Your lives just sound so social media.
Yeah, it just sounded real weird. And then we also have 3 pay options. $1 option gets you the episodes early. $3 option gets you a little more spice sprinkled in, and the $10 option gets you the whole shebang. So check those out. And yeah, Matthew, do you have anything that you want to add?
I just want to thank you all for hanging around with us to talk about the big stuff, because everything we've told you is 100% true.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. If you have thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in a future episode, drop us a line on our social media channels. Engage with this video when you are now watching it as a VOD on YouTube. Send us an email. We love hearing from our listeners, bringing us topics, because if you leave it up to the 3 of us, we're going to eventually be talking about underwater basket weaving. So we would appreciate you guys reaching out a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to Talking About the Big Stuff on your favorite platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Engage with it. Criticize us. We need to grow and be better, and you're going to help us be there. You're going to help us get to that point. It really helps us more to reach out and also to keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more big ideas and more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.